thank you. I'm Drew Barrymore.
Relax, kid. You're gonna be just fine tonight.
Hey, come on. Can I get you a glass of milk, honey?
Milk? I'm a Barrymore. Get me a drink and make it a double.
I didn't want to go off and play Barbies. I wanted to go out to a club and dance.
Did you ever stop and think, none of this would be happening to me if I weren't a Barrymore?
I was a real wild child. And I just got so out of control that no one knew what to do with me.
From the innocent face of Hollywood sweetheart to issuing brutal threats to those who once controlled her life, Drew Barrymore's story is unlike any other.
I really didn't know the difference. I was like 6 years old, hanging out with a bunch of 25-year-olds. I liked being around older people. I felt like I could relate to them better.
Why?
Just because they were more experienced.
How did Drew go from a bubbly child star to rehab at just 13 years old?
How old were you there at a nightclub?
I was like 7.
That's not okay.
And why is her fierce response to those who exploited her going viral? Now Drew Barrymore's rise to fame was anything but glamorous. At just 7 years old, she stole America's heart in at the extraterrestrial. But behind the scenes, her life was spiraling out of control. Her mother, Jade Barrymore, introduced Drew to Hollywood's wild nightlife at an unthinkably young age. By 9, Drew was drinking. By 12, she was using. And at just 13, she was sent to rehab. Not once, but twice. Drew's raw and shocking confession about being exploited as a child star continues to resonate. They took everything from me, my childhood, my innocence, my voice. Despite these struggles, Drew's resilience is undeniable. She's opened up about her complex relationship with her mother, admitting, "There were times I thought we'd never speak again." But what exactly caused their relationship to crumble, and how did Drew's shocking legal emancipation at 14 forever change their dynamic? Drew Barrymore's life turned into a Hollywood cautionary tale, blacklisted from the industry. At just 12 years old, she fought her way back to stardom in her 20s, even though she made an incredible comeback. The struggles she faced as a child left lasting scars that shaped her decisions.
14, though, you knew to get emancipated from your mother.
Yep, which again, we hand shook, and it was a very respectful
so 14,
court date.
You're
But where you
on
go
14.
at 14?
Didn't you go to Crosby's house?
I had to live with David Crosby for 2 months.
As we dive deeper, we'll uncover the shocking truths about Drew's battle with addiction, her path to sobriety, and how she's using her voice to take a stand against exploitation in Hollywood. Born into Hollywood royalty, Drew's path seemed destined for greatness. Her grandfather, John Barrymore, was a revered actor, and her parents had ties to the entertainment industry. But Drew's father, John Drew Barrymore, was a violent alcoholic who abandoned her early on, leaving her in the sole care of her mother. Jade Barrymore wasn't your typical parent. Desperate for fame and fortune, she thrust Drew into the spotlight at an early age, disregarding the emotional toll it would take.
How old were you there at a nightclub?
I was like 7.
That's not okay.
Drew's exposure to New York's infamous nightclub scene led to a rapid descent into substance abuse. By the time she turned 10, the lines between childhood and adulthood were irreparably blurred. One of the most heartbreaking aspects of Drew's story is her strained relationship with her mother. Drew Barrymore always had a complicated relationship with her mother. She even admitted in Wildflower that her mom lost credibility as a parent for taking her to Studio 54 instead of school. By the time she was 14, with her institution stay behind her, the young actress really wanted to change her life, but that meant she had to change her relationship with her mom. In her words, the pair had driven their relationship to the ground, so she filed for emancipation on the day of my hearing. My mother was there in full support of my emancipation, which would mean me living on my own, Barrymore wrote in her memoir. The Guardian, I felt so sad, but too much had happened. The judge walked in, and the day went on in a blur. In an interview on Netflix's Norm Macdonald has a show via the actress revealed that becoming an adult at the age of 14 sort of wiped the slate clean on everything that happened prior. I got my is over with at like 14, Barrymore said, like midlife crisis, institutionalized, blacklisted, no family. Got it done, and then got into the cycle of being my own parent. At the time Wildflower was published, Vulture reported that Barrymore had barely spoken to her mother since her emancipation, but still financially supported her. Drew's struggles with substance abuse are well documented by her own admission. Addiction became her coping mechanism for the trauma she endured in her first shocking memoir, 1990's Little Girl Lost. The actress revealed that she started pouring liquor over her ice cream, as paraphrased by E! News, when she was just 7 years old and got drunk for the first time at Rob Lowe's birthday party when she was only 9, according to The Guardian. Her mother first took her to Studio 54 that same year, and the pair often went to clubs throughout Barrymore's childhood. It was like Disneyland for adults. Only I got to be a part of it. We went out pretty regularly, sometimes once a week, other times up to 5 times, she wrote in Little Girl Lost. But nothing was ever enough for me. By the time Barrymore was 11 years old, things escalated in Wildflower. She revealed that she got drunk and listened to heavy metal at a hotel room in Munich while filming Babes in Toyland. When a rock band came through, they proceeded down a path of drunken debauchery by stealing dozens of laundry bags full of clothing per Vulture and throwing them into the river from the hotel's balconies. The moment was so egregious that Barrymore actually started to feel guilty and reined it in for the rest of the shoot. At an age where most girls are playing with Barbie dolls or picking out colors for their braces and haven't even gotten their first period, Drew Barrymore was getting into drugs.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm Drew Barrymore.
Relax, kid. You're gonna be just fine tonight.
Hey, come on. Can I get you a glass of milk, honey?
Milk? I'm a Barrymore. Get me a drink and make it a double.
People revealed that she had already been smoking cigarettes for about a year when she first picked up weed at the age of 10, and A2 reports conflict on where the drugs actually came from. People says it was from a group of young adults, while E! News claims it was given to her by a friend's mother. But the main takeaway was that it wasn't enough. Eventually, pot got boring, and my addict mind told me, well, if smoking pot is cute, it'll also be cute to get the heavier stuff, like Barrymore told people back in 1989. It was gradual. What I did kept getting worse and worse, and I didn't care what anybody else thought. At the age of 12, Barrymore was nurturing a habit. By the time she was 13, she had undergone extensive drug rehabilitation treatment, twice according to People. Today, the actress doesn't touch the stuff on Netflix's Norm Macdonald has a show. The Santa Clarita Diet star revealed that nothing would make her have a panic attack and seem like a bigger nightmare than in a 1989 People cover story. Things were looking up for Drew Barrymore, who had just left drug treatment. Unfortunately, the actress had yet to reach rock bottom. But it didn't take long. By the time her 1990 cover story was published, she'd broken her sobriety, and tabloids were swirling with rumors of an attempted suicide. Things started unraveling when Barrymore celebrated 6 months of sobriety by smoking a joint with her friend. The night ended in a car accident where she cracked her head against the window, but miraculously walked away unscathed. The guilt began to eat at the actress, and her real relationship with her mother deteriorated. She moved out. Her depression got worse, and then her estranged father, who she hadn't seen in 8 years, called her begging for money. Finding out her friends were mad at her was the final straw. I thought, my dad hates me. I'm fat, ugly, I've got no money. I'm living on my own. Nobody likes me. I can't stand this. Barrymore said, I grabbed a knife and I thought, well, what shows the most pain? So I went in the living room and I cut. Drew's incident was widely reported as an attempted suicide, but she insisted she didn't want to die. Drew Barrymore's mother institutionalized her following the cutting incident. According to E! News, the then 13-year-old actress spent 18 months in the facility, a long stay that was vastly needed. However much she would have resisted going if given the chance, Barrymore told The Guardian that her mother didn't even tell her she was being committed, or she would have run away. But her mom wasn't wrong, per Barrymore, because it was finally the thing that helped the never-been-kissed starch change her life for good. I realized honestly, yeah, my mom locked me up in an institution, she told The Guardian. Boohoo. But it did give an amazing discipline. It was like serious recruitment training in boot camp, and it was horrible and dark. and very long-lived a year and a half. But I needed it. I needed that whole insane discipline Barrymore added my life. Was not normal. I was not a kid in school with normal circumstances. There was something very abnormal, and I needed some severe shift. Despite the odds, she managed to overcome her demons.
Go off and play Barbies. I wanted to go out to a club and dance.
Did you ever stop and think, none of this would be happening to me if I weren't a...
Her journey wasn't linear. Even after achieving sobriety as a teenager, Drew relapsed following her divorce in 2016. But today, she's proudly living a life free from alcohol and drugs, crediting her children and career as her anchors. Drew Barrymore once revealed in a 2010 interview that during her teenage years, she wasn't trying to end her life, but was desperate to escape her mother's control. At just 15, Drew petitioned a juvenile court for emancipation, won her case, and moved into her own apartment. This legal step, while freeing, brought a storm of media attention she hadn't anticipated or wanted. In her autobiography, Drew opened up about the deep insecurities that had followed her for years. She shared that overcoming her low self-esteem was a major focus of her time in rehab, where she worked through significant emotional challenges. Drew entered rehab for substance abuse treatment. For the second time as a young teenager, one of her counselors, Betty Wyman, described her as so sick. When they first met, Drew's mother, Jade Barrymore, was unable to understand or manage her daughter's psychological struggles and drug use. The structured environment of rehab introduced Drew to a strict daily routine. Mornings began at 7:30, followed by school therapy sessions, dinner, and more group meetings. Initially, Drew didn't take the process seriously and put on a false front during group therapy. However, as she listened to others share their stories, she began to reflect on her own behaviors. She recognized that her obsessive and compulsive tendencies, as well as her drive to overachieve, were rooted in an addictive personality, one of the most challenging aspects of rehab. For Drew was confronting suppressed emotions. Years of alcohol and drug use had numbed her feelings of low self-esteem and resentment, particularly toward her mother, for failing to provide the guidance she desperately needed. Drew described this emotional reckoning as terrifying, acknowledging that recovery is an ongoing process and not a finite solution. She stressed the importance of learning to manage the underlying issues that fuel addiction. Drew's struggles with addiction were not entirely surprising. Given her family history, addiction had plagued the Barrymore family for generations. Her grandfather, John Barrymore, was a silent film star whose career declined due to his heavy drinking. He died at the age of 60 from kidney failure, cirrhosis of the liver, and other complications related to alcoholism. Drew's aunt, Diana Barrymore, also battled addiction throughout her life, which ultimately ended in a fatal drug overdose in 1960. Research has shown that addiction often has a genetic component, and Drew's family history likely increased her risk of substance abuse by as much as 60%. After completing multiple rehab programs before turning 16, Drew worked hard to maintain her sobriety. She surrounded herself with supportive friends, many of whom were also recovering addicts, and avoided the temptations of New York City nightlife. She also repaired her relationships with both her estranged father and mother, finding some closure in those difficult connections. However, despite doing all this work, Hollywood was still not ready to take her back in.
So upsetting at first, but over the course of that year and a half, I left there like the most humble person you could ever imagine.
In a 2020 interview, Drew provided a glimpse into the world of Hollywood and its often cruel treatment of those who falter. The actress shared her experience of being sent to rehab as a teenager, a revelation that shed light on the industry's cold and unforgiving nature. Film bosses just wrote me off as damaged goods, and I sadly understood that, she commented, reflecting on the moment when H-Wood turned its back on her. It's a reminder of how quickly the industry can discard its young stars when they face adversity, leaving them to fend for themselves in a world where fame can be a double-edged sword. But it's at this juncture that we find ourselves grappling with a perplexing question. How could Hollywood, the very entity that played a significant role in Drew Barrymore's early exposure to drugs and alcohol, abandon her when she needed support? The most could it be that the very industry elites didn't want to be named as a contributing factor in her descent into addiction.
I had just come out of being in an institution for a year and a half, and it was a very severe lockdown, like no Hollywood rehab 30-day Malibu beachside bullshit.
Right.
This was, school of hard knocks in the most severe way.
And you're 13.
And I'm 13 to 14, but I swear to God, it's what I needed.
In any case, the Hollywood lifestyle of the 1980s was notorious for its excesses and indulgence. It was a world where young stars like Drew Barrymore found themselves caught between its alluring charm and perilous pitfalls. While it's essential to avoid oversimplifying the issue by attributing her struggles solely to Hollywood, it's equally crucial to acknowledge the complex interplay of factors that shaped her journey. Drew's early exposure to fame adult environments and the pressure to conform all contributed to her vulnerability during her formative years. The Hollywood culture of excess and ready availability of substances further heightened the risk. It's a challenging reality to reconcile. An industry that thrust her into the limelight also exposed her to the temptations and dangers that came with it. Now, let's talk about Hollywood's seductive charm. It's a place where dreams are born, but it's also where nightmares lurk in the shadows. The relentless pressure to fit in, to be part of the exclusive in crowd, proved to be a formidable adversary. For Drew, her desire for acceptance among her older co-stars and peers led her down a treacherous path where experimentation with substances became all too common in Drew Barrymore's case. These Hollywood-related factors combined with her personal circumstances to create a challenging environment. However, it's essential to remember that individual choices and circumstances also played significant roles in her struggles. Her journey serves as a reminder that the path to recovery is multifaceted, and that support and understanding are essential, especially in a town where fame can be both a blessing and a curse. But to truly grasp the depth of Hollywood's influence on young stars like Drew Barrymore, we must explore the various facets of this dynamic relationship. It's a world where dreams are nurtured, but it's also a world where vulnerabilities are exposed and sometimes exploited. Drew Barrymore's journey into the world of entertainment began at a remarkably young age. She first graced the silver screen at the tender age of 4, leaving a mark on audiences worldwide as Jodie Innette in 1982.
Said then they were friends, but they weren't really friends. I would walk up and they would be like, "Oh, it's little Drew Barrymore."
This breakout role catapulted her to fame, and her life was forever changed. But the Hollywood spotlight doesn't just illuminate, it can also cast shadows. As Drew's star ascended, she found herself immersed in a world where premieres, parties, and events were the norm. These gatherings, often attended by adults, were fertile ground for alcohol consumption, and on occasion drug use for a child like Drew, who was still in her formative years. Being surrounded by this behavior had the potential to normalize it, even if she was not actively participating. You see, child actors, particularly those as famous as Drew Barrymore, frequently found themselves navigating adult-dominated spaces, whether it was on film sets, at after-parties, or industry events. They were exposed to adult behaviors, conversations, and expectations. This early exposure could have had a profound impact on her development. While she was still a child, she was navigating a world that demanded her to act and behave like an adult, which could have been confusing and challenging.